How's it going, everyone? This week I'm going to be building something with this little airplane. It's a cool little model kit that I found the other day. Hold on, let me get this. Hello?
Achuta boilai habi titaki dawajo choipodo ke lido junkie. Really dig all the Star Wars stuff you do. You seem like a cool guy, so please join my pod race. If not, I'll feed you to my Sarlacc or something. Bye.
Alright, that's a change of plans, I guess. Welcome back to Boylai's Hobby Workshop Bashing Stuff Studio. This week, I'm building a custom from-scratch Podracer as part of a collaboration with a few of my favorite YouTubers. I had a lot of fun with this one. Hope you enjoy. I started by cutting these bottles in half. These will make up the main bodies for the engines. Then I went to Hobby Lobby to look for some engine parts. I scouted the aisles looking for anything fun and interesting, and generally round. I found these cool candle stakes, which are made to hold candles in floral arrangements. Thought those looked pretty cool. Also found some tiny funnels, some little measuring cups, some plastic rings from the fabric section, and some little wooden barrels. I had a few other things in my shopping cart that were equally unrelated to each other. And I couldn't help but notice that the cashier was very curious as to what I would be doing with all of this random stuff. But they didn't ask, so I didn't tell. And it was nice to be able to leave the store with my dignity. I hot glued all of the pieces together in a semi-planned out way. And once I had everything together, I had the basic shape for my engines. I knew I wanted to add something to the front of these engines to help bring the visual weight forward, so I cut up some square styrene tubing at a 45-degree angle, a couple of lengths, and I made these large ambiguous rectangles. I don't think the rectangles add anything in terms of performance to this Podracer. I think they are just for looks, and I think it makes it look more intimidating. So we'll just say that. We'll say that these big pieces on the front are just to intimidate the other Podracers. I also added some thinner styrene tubes to the front measuring cup. I will be mounting stuff on these later. It was then time to start adding some of the finer details. I didn't really have a plan for this, just kind of made it up as I went using pieces from my box of leftovers. I did know that I wanted to have two beams running across the middle, so I made sure to drill some holes for that and mark them with styrene. I used some styrene rods to hide some of the seams that I was not happy with, as well as create some little trim pieces. I knew it was going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to run these wires once the plastic was painted and I couldn't see through it. So I made sure to run those through before moving on. And then I added some more little pieces to help decorate where the beams would come out. And of course I broke out the guitar string. I used the guitar string to create some hoses. It's great because it will hold its shape if you bend it, and has that secondary wire that wraps around, which at this scale makes a very convincing hose. To connect the engines to each other and to the cockpit, I found this handle from a lantern. It was just the right hardness to be able to bend, but is still nice and firm and holds everything together really well. In order to fit in with the rest of the people in this collaboration, I made sure to add some bead rivets. I also scored some panel lines directly onto the plastic. They are hard to see right now, but after painting, they become a lot more obvious. To connect the engines to the lantern handle wire, I drilled some holes in the top of the engines, and then I screwed in some little eye hooks. The wire runs through both of these hooks, and it worked out really well. It hangs off the wire, and it's nice and sturdy. I also wanted to have some little flaps around the measuring cups on the front and the back of the engine. So I cut out some little styrene wedges. I bent those to make them a little bit more round so they'd fit in place better, and I hot glued them in place. After all of those were in place, it was time to move on to the cockpit. The cockpit was pretty much made entirely from a mutilated X-Wing model. It was 1:72, and I had these little 1:72 scale astronauts. So I decided to put 2 of them in there as pilots. I know there's probably only supposed to be 1 pilot per Podracer, but they were a little small for the scale I was going for. So we'll just say they're like Oompa Loompa size, and they work better as a team. I don't know, I'm just kind of making it up. I do realize now I should have had handlebars or some steering apparatus. That was an oversight. For the standoffs that hold the engines up, I cut some brass tubing and made some little engine lollipops. Then marked out and drilled holes where the standoffs would go into the base. For the electronics, I used the battery housing from a tea light candle. I glued that under where the cockpit would go so it's nice and hidden. And then I wrapped the positive lead up one side, soldered that in place. I wrapped the negative up the other side. I wanted them to kind of have a dual purpose, not only being a visual feature, but a practical one. I glued the cockpit in place, and it was time to prime. I do realize that priming with a metallic silver spray paint is usually not a good idea, because it does not hold paint very well, and that is the purpose of a primer. But in this case, it was exactly what I was looking for. I don't have to apply a latex layer or chipping medium underneath. The spray paint acts as that altogether, so I'm able to chip off the paint later, which is what I was going for, and I don't have to worry about applying that in-between layer of chipping medium. I also applied a pre-shade, get all of those recessed areas nice and dark. I went over it with a brown, and then I chipped away. Went a little too heavy with the chipping the first time, so I did go back over and touch up some of those spots. You can see right here. I was really happy with how that turned out. Painted my little astronauts in a gray spacesuit and sealed it. Then it was time to move on to the plasma beams. I used these 3-volt filaments that I use in a lot of my projects. I'll link those below if you're curious. And then I soldered them in place in an X formation. I did go back and wrap them around each other to make them look a little bit more interwoven. And once those were both in place, I added a bunch of hot glue to make them look a little bit more plasma-like. The last big thing to do was to create the terrain on the base. I cut up some little pieces of foam to make some little hills, glued those pieces down, and I mixed up some plaster, Mod Podge, and paint, and I smeared that across the entire base. Once that was dry, I applied a layer of sand and I sealed it in place with a glue water mixture. The very last thing to do was to clean up the edges with some black paint, and I called it good. that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do go check out the videos from all of these other talented creators. I had a lot of fun being a part of this collaboration. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy Star Wars Day, everyone. I'll see you next time.